Put that coffee down. Sorry about that. I've been calling my stream Chess for Closers for a while, and I never once have quoted my favorite movie. Coffee's for Closers. Uh, I may be dating myself. Glengarry Glen Ross is the movie. Anyway, okay, never mind. I've got one of my favorite Bobby Fischer games from 1971 in the when he dazzled everybody by beating two of the top five players in the world 6-zip, and then he beat the former world champion 5.5 to 2.5 or something. Anyway, this game is against Taimanov. This is the first of his opponents in the candidates matches. As everyone knows, he beat Taimanov 6-0, but then he had to play Bent Larson, and yes, he was favored, but he wasn't favored to win 6-0, which is what happened. And then Petrosian. Anyway, who knew? But Fischer was favored there too, but he really barreled over them. Anyway, this game became pretty famous. It's a beautiful game. You don't see a pure Zugzwang. I'm not. I don't want to give things away. The first half of the game isn't particularly interesting, but let me zip through it here. Fischer had white. What do you know? Taimanov played the Taimanov variation. And this is sort of fun here. You don't see this very often. Yeah, bishop attacks queen. Queen moves, right? No, gets a developing move and attacks. And so, if the queens come off, black could take and then take on c3. But the two bishops are going to be very powerful. Anyway, it's a fun thing to see. Okay, and yeah, nothing really to write home about here. Here's a position. Now, if black takes on e3, white doesn't take back with the queen, which sort of for people who like their pawns to be nicely positioned. Instead, white should take back with the f pawn. The d6 pawn is about to go, and it can't be defended by king e7 because the weak d5 square white has rook takes f6, winning instantly. So let's see what Taimanov played. Okay, he played bishop f at g4. Fischer took, and now you can't take on d1 because the intermezzo on d6. So black took back, and f3. Okay, and this looks pretty normal here. And now white decided that he's playing for a win, and f4 is sort of an emblematic of an intention to win. And rook to d8, and knight to d5. Now, usually if you like bishops better than knights, you would keep your bishop by taking the knight, but then that gives white that extra tempo. Ed hitting the bishop if the bishop is still on e6, and then maybe d6. So black is going to make a go of it with his knight against white's bishop, against Fischer's bishop, which is fraught. Okay, so black's not castled yet, and white's got all his pieces out. So black is under a little pressure. And let's see how he handles it. So he wants to keep. Yeah, there was some danger here. For instance, d6 is threatened. And pass pawn, which is defended, opening the bishop to b7. This pawn is hanging right now also, by the way. If black takes on f4, probably white would play the d rook to e1, and rook takes, black's rook on h8 is out of play. E4 is probably the best move here, and the computer agrees. And now white could play c4 here, but if black ever gets his knight to d6, not easily done, I guess. But a knight blockading a pawn on d6, white pawn on d5, with a knight on d6 is a pleasant place for a knight to be. Fischer found this move. And now, boom, rook takes e4. Isn't winning, but yeah, let's see. I don't have to make I already programmed these moves in. Okay, so king to d8. And now, in my earlier days, or even now in Blitz at least, I'd be tempted to sacrifice the queen for a rook and a knight. But at grandmaster level, yeah, white would probably win the c pawn, but then he's down a queen. Anyway, so that didn't happen. So yeah, white just moved his queen, and the rooks are coming off. And now black should just maybe move his king to c8, although white would be better. Anyway, he traded queens. And yeah, we're getting to the point that this is sort of, for instance, Irving Chernov, I think, had a book on endgames, and I guess no, this is a Capablanca. Nah, never mind. The Capablanca is his best chess ending, so this has nothing to do with Bobby Fischer. But he had a bunch of Capablanca games, but he would start at a position where Capablanca already had quite an edge, and Chernov would downplay the edge and talk about how everything that happened after this move was pure genius on Capablanca's part. In fact, he was already well ahead. This isn't the same sort of position, but white has an edge, and the reason I bring it up is that, as I said at the beginning, the first 20 moves or so were just a Taimanov variation of the Sicilian. But here the ending, the debate between the knight and the bishop, and how Fischer handles bishops, he was famous for it. This is sort of where you start seeing the diagram in endgame books and stuff. Rook e5. So let's sum up here. Of course, he's threatening the c5 pawn. The computer has this at just almost equal, 0.32, which is very little. So let's see how white ends up winning this game. The best move here is actually king to d6, because if white just grabs the b7 pawn and rook to b8, and with a rook on b2, even if black stays down a pawn, he's got way too much counterplay for white to win. But Taimanov played this move, and now watch this repositioning of the bishop with tempo. A5, boom, all forced, right? Now there's a rook on f8, can't move. That's terrible, right? In my opinion now, but the computer still says 0.93. I would absolutely plan on winning this game against anyone from master on down. This looks like it's a really nice edge, and yet the computer isn't too impressed with it. But again, this game was played before computers, and even if it was played yesterday, and I've mentioned this, I think this is an important point. Maybe Fischer knew. I'm sure he was certain he was going to win the game, but you never really know, except if it's ridiculously obvious, and in which case your opponent's probably resigned. You never know how good your position is. If you're human, I'm racked with self-doubt. I don't think I would be here, but is this a win? Computer says no. I would say yes, and I'd have to prove something here. Okay, so Fischer is going to prove something. What do you know? He gets his king out, and not to f2, of course, because of the fork on g4. King d6, nothing in particular developing. Nothing to write home about here. Okay, so that knight would like to show up on d4. It's not going to be allowed to. Okay, back to e3, back to d6. Yeah, maybe this is one reason why I hadn't discovered the old Indian defense when this game was played. That was 1973. But if you remember, I did a couple shows on the old Indian, and I even mentioned that the old Indian reverses Ulf Andersson's favorite position, or so said Alex Yermolinsky in the blurb in the back of the book on Ulf Andersson's collection of games. Usually in the Ulf Andersson games and the Dave Sherman games, there's a knight on c4 with a pawn on a4 and a pawn on c3, or with black, it would be white with his pawn on c4 and a black knight on c5. Anyway, if you'll notice, it seems to be true even with the bishop. Whatever piece is on c4 here is protected against attack, even if there's no b pawn and the b line is open. Rooks can't get to the b4 square or a4 square to attack. Kings can't get there. The c line is closed. This bishop is just a beautiful piece, and so this is one of my favorite pawn structures. So another nothing move. Is he coming into f5? Maybe he is, and white goes back to e2. Okay, now he played back. Now, okay, so I think this is another example, and we'll see it later too. If you've read the book Chess Strategy by Shereshevsky, he quotes some old Russian about how, or maybe it's Capablanca, instead of moving a pawn up twice, move it up once, look around, and then move up again. But also, there's a whole chapter in Shereshevsky, do not hurry. Now, here's where Taimanov played this move, and the computer doesn't like it. I thought, let's go back here, I thought he must have played this because he was afraid of h5 on white's part, and sort of just gaining space. But h5 is not even the third best move in the computer's. If black had played something else, the computer does not think that h5 is a good move. Maybe Taimanov thought it was, but at any rate, he played h5. And this is the beginning, and this is sort of an important moment in this game, I think, at least, is that this pawn move precipitated other pawn moves. And the final position, or the final Zugzwang, wouldn't have happened, of course. It would have been a different game if black hadn't pushed these pawns. But I suspect that this is one of those things where, they talk about how chess has evolved over the years. I don't think grandmasters today would play h5 because they've seen this game. But it's just, they pawns don't go backwards. And well, let's just show you. I'll show you that Fischer punished this. Watch this: rook to d3, and now rook to d5. Well, he's starting to take that pawn on h5, and it can't be defended by rook h8 because the f7 pawn and the g7 pawn are going to be attacked. And so what do you know? He has to play this. Oh no, he didn't play g6. He played f5, which is giving away the e6 square. This diagonal is open all the way to g8. and Fischer made use of it. Um, and you know that this pawn is going to end up on g6 sooner or later. So I think h5 was an unfortunate move, and that's one reason why this game is so famous, because of the result of one move on the 35th move for black. Okay, so let's continue here. Yeah, okay, nothing going on here. Yeah, you can't allow rook e8, right? Can't allow that. So, yeah. Nothing, yeah, g6. It looks harmless. It looks harmless. But let's just look back and see what other options there were. I guess rook to d6. I think that black's going to end up playing g6 at some point anyway. But, and you know, Fischer really felt that he had made some progress. H5 was an unforced error, but F5 didn't have to be played. G6, maybe the die was already cast. So now here's where, now if you look, white is threatening. Is this a threat to trade off rooks? Well, Fischer thought so. And Taimanov evidently wasn't impressed, because he did not avoid it. So the rooks are coming off. I'll say a little bit more about that in due course. Okay, here they come. We know where white's king is headed. Okay, king can't stay there. Okay, so more Cheryshev. Yeah, do not hurry. But how about the principle of two weaknesses? There they are. They're big as day. And of course, when you have a bishop, which can lose tempos, playing against a knight which cannot lose a tempo, playing for Zugzwang, yeah, bishop can triangulate. Knights can't triangulate. Yeah, the computer thinks this is already lost. Let me go back. Yeah. Okay. I looked at this a little while ago. The computer thought it was, white had an edge 1.5% or something until the rooks come off. And then white is better by 3 or 4 or something. And so, yeah, check, king up to c4. Okay, so let's look and see what's going on here. Yeah, two weaknesses. And a bishop that can triangulate, can give the move to black whenever. So how is this Zugzwang going to happen? Let's think about it for a minute. I won't have you pause the video. Let's think about it together. Yeah, white's king wants to get a little farther into the position, into b5. Or d5 if allowed, and if his king is allowed to come in here and take all the kingside pawns, that would work too. But realistically, he can get to b5, attack the b6 pawn. His bishop can go back and forth, attacking the g6 pawn, and so the Zugzwang, and my source is a Robert Wade book, the collection of Fischer's games. He's certain that Fischer saw the final Zugzwang in this position, and I can imagine that. But maybe we can imagine it too. We got the two weaknesses. We got the triangulating minor piece. It should be a matter of technique, as they say. So let's see here. Okay, so check. So here comes white into b5. And, oops, threatening mate. That's serious business. Got to do something. I wonder, did Fischer see that? Check, and bishop there, and now no mate anymore. On the check, white goes into a6. Remember, there's two squares that white can attack the one weakness on the queen side, and two squares that he can attack the one on the other side. So that is a plethora of or what's the famous French embarras de richesse, or however they say that. Okay, so white's made progress. Okay, so the knight can't move, right? So the king moves. Okay, white is starting to triangulate here. Okay, now white is waiting for the king to move so he can go either here or here, right? Well, that's why black played king a7, because the knight is covering c6. Okay, more triangulating. And now again, let's go back a minute here. If black had played king to a7, all well and good, white has nothing he can do immediately. But of course, if the knight moves, if he goes to a7, white can play c4. Black can't go back to b7, so the king can't move, or else he loses to b6. And if the knight moves, white comes in and game over. So that's why he played king to c7. He had to. And now, all of a sudden, it's getting closer. Again, Fischer surely saw this. Knight back, bishop here, knight back, bishop triangulating, bishop c7, f7, bishop e8, bingo, zugzwang. King moves, if the black king moves, b6 hangs. If the knight moves, g6 hangs. So, lucky for black, he can win a tempo by hitting the bishop and then come right back to c7. Can't do it. Did I? Here. Yeah. And you know, the funny thing about it, it's just so unfortunate that knight. Let's move it back here. Look at this knight. Just can't do anything aggressively here. I remember when this first game was played, I was wondering, why didn't Fischer come over and win the a pawn? Can't be defended. But of course, the point is time. If you take 2 moves to play there, yes, you have 3 connected pass pawns, but you give black 3 moves to organize some sort of defense. And of course, you're also, it's not, you have something to compare it to. What's so bad about b4? Not a thing. Well, this is hopeless. Now, now even after he takes the g pawn and he's still not threatening anything, Fischer played this move. He's going to escort his a pawn all the way in, and the game is over. Okay. So what about this? What about this game? How to think about this game? Like I said, the do not hurry, and there was a saying in the early 20th century. Not sure who came up with it, and it's to be taken with a grain of salt. Don't do anything, or it was something like that. Wait for your opponent to come up with an idea. It's sure to be bad, and then you'll benefit. And so I think that, allowing black to coaxing black's pawns forward the way Fischer did. I don't think he thought when the pawns are moving that he was then winning, but he knew he had made progress. So that's something that Fischer did. And also with Taimanov, one of the top players in the world, of course, top 5 surely, allowing the rooks to be traded off. The computer makes it clear that while white had a nice edge, rook and bishop versus rook and knight, the bishop and knight ending was much stronger and winning, evidently. I don't think they knew that it was... Taimanov obviously didn't think he was losing by allowing the rooks to come off. And that's, again, I think that grandmasters have learned from Bobby Fischer. Yeah, keep the rooks on. And I guess the logical thing you can say is that the black rook was better defensively then the white rook was on offense. The white the matchup bishop and knight was clear, bishop better, but the black rook was holding his own. White wasn't able to get his rook into e8 and around, to h8 or something, which would have been a winning idea. And so, if the rook is a better defensive piece than the white is offensively, then white should trade the rooks, and black should avoid it. And Taimanov didn't do it. I just think it's a beautiful game. And so, like I say, always be closing. And hit the like button and subscribe. And check me out next time on Chess for Closers.